Hello, and good day to everyone attending today's webcast, Breaking Barriers, How Academic Librarians Can Communicate More Effectively with Faculty, sponsored by Emerald Group Publishing and Library Journal. This is Colleen Tyson. I'm a Special Collections Outreach and Instruction Librarian for Library Journal, and I'll be the moderator for today's webcast. But before we can go further, I've got a few housekeeping items to run through. If you're experiencing any technical problems, please use the red Q&A button on the audience console, and the webcast tech team will get to you as soon as possible. If your screen becomes locked due to local network congestion, try using F5 to refresh the webcast console. If you're on a Mac, you can use Command R. This slide presentation is available for download in the green Resources folder on the bottom menu dock. A certificate for continuing education credit is also available in the Resources folder. That is labeled Certificate. If you have any questions or comments, just send those in at any time via the red Q&A box. And please join the conversation on Twitter. Tweet us at Library Journal with the hashtag LJEmerald. Well, we'd like to begin today with some introductions. Kim, could you lead us off and say a few words about yourself?
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Kim Leader Reid. I'm Director of Library Services at the College of Western Idaho.
Great, and Eric, could you bring us up next?
Yes, my name is Eric Schwartz. I'm the marketing manager here at Emerald Group Publishing, sponsor of the event, located out of Cambridge, Massachusetts.
And Wayne?
This is Wayne Bivens-Tatum. I'm the philosophy and religion librarian at Princeton University, and I'm doing this from my underground lair in the Firestone Library.
And Bonnie.
Hello, Colleen and everyone. I'm Bonnie Buchanan. I'm the George Albers Professor of Finance at Seattle University, and I'm also library liaison with the library and the business school.
Excellent. And as I mentioned, this is Colleen Tyson, your moderator for today. I'm an outreach and instruction librarian for special collections at the University of Iowa. And now, Eric Schwartz, would you like to say a few brief words about Emerald Group Publishing, our sponsor for today?
Sure. So to give everyone an idea who might not be familiar with Emerald Group Publishing, I thought I'd throw a brief history out to you. The company was originated in 1967 by a group of academics located in the United Kingdom. The 60s, obviously an era for change, and we like to think that there was a bit of a mini revolution, if you will, of a group of academics not necessarily happy with some of the research that was being carried out. So in 1967, they launched acquired their own journal for £1. That journal was the British Journal of Management. Today it's now called Management Decision, and it's one of our flagship publications. Skipping to the 90s and 2000, Emerald goes full text. That goes live online as of 1995. We'd like to think we were fairly new to the online marketplace in terms of research. That's certainly a lot sooner than I had internet at my own home. 2011, we officially renamed the company officially as Emerald. Today, we remain an independent, family-owned academic publisher. One of those academics that started that original journal in 1968 still sits on our board of directors. We have 292 employees globally. We have a growing staff in North America. We're now up to 23 employees throughout the U.S. 15 are here based in Boston, specifically Cambridge, where I am located. We publish over 295 journals and 2,500 books and book series. We specialize in business and management. That's obviously where our roots are. However, a number of librarians online might know us from our library studies. We also reach out in the areas of education, engineering, and health and social care. And then just giving an idea of where Emerald may be going, we're expanding our case study collection and our books program as well. And in 2014, we launched a new business product and innovation team working on advancing our current products and launching some new ones.
Great, thanks, Eric. So next up, we have our first question for the day to start us off in our discussion. And that question is, what are the factors that create an environment for strong librarian-faculty relationships? And Kim Leader Reid is going to lead us off with this first question.
Thanks, everyone. So I'm Kim Leader Reid. I'm Director of Library Services at the College of Western Idaho, and I just wanted to share a few thoughts with you all today about how we create a positive environment for growth between librarians and faculty on our campuses. Obviously, a huge issue that many of us face in just getting our basic work done. So to start, let's start with the basics, how we build new relationships. We can think about personal relationships with friends, family, acquaintances, or work relationships with colleagues, superiors, or support staff. The ways that we build relationships with these people informally can give us insight into strategies for building them deliberately. Does this sound too simple? The theory beneath all of this is something called relationship marketing. And in relationship marketing, we put the product aside. And in libraries, our product is our library, right? It's our services and all of our instruction, the things that we're essentially trying to sell to faculty. So relationship marketing involves setting that aside. No selling, no advertising, no outreach, gasp. Just a basic focus on the customer with consideration for retention and building long-term relationships. Now, this has been shown to generate greater success over time than basic sales approaches. When we take the relationship marketing concept and apply it to libraries, we can learn a lot about how to build our customer base or our faculty group in a way that will generate great support and collaboration. Now, I didn't come up with this on my own. Sue Phelps and Nicole Campbell, in a 2012 study in the Journal of Academic Librarianship, did a literature survey about librarian faculty relationships and analyzed those relationships for common elements. Specifically, what they found is that there are basically three simple antecedents that lay the groundwork for strong relationships in those areas. So let's talk about those. The first is shared values or goals. Now, it's kind of a no-brainer with faculty, right? We know as librarians that we're in it for the same reasons as faculty. We aspire to help students. We're in it for student success. And specifically, we're hoping to see increased information literacy skills among students. Now, student success is certainly a goal for faculty, and that's something that we can all talk about. When we get into talking about information literacy, we may lose faculty a little bit, and I think we've all experienced that. They sometimes have different vocabulary for these things. They may talk about better research skills, improved citations, so we have to be open to the way that they talk about those things and understand that that's still a shared goal and not something different. So when we recognize those common goals, we can leverage them to create new collaborative partnerships or just build new allies on campus. Now, the second antecedent is called relationship benefits, and that is a focus on what we get out of working together. With faculty, assuming we do our work well, that is often a positive impact on student learning, and we can recognize that, measure it if we're doing our assessment, and enjoy those benefits. The other benefit that sometimes we forget about because we're so focused on the job at hand is personal enjoyment and connection with faculty. We're social animals as humans, no matter how much we're online. And part of working with faculty is overcoming stereotypes, understanding each other, and learning more about each other's perspectives. We may be in it for the same goals, but sometimes those goals are interpreted very differently. The third antecedent is, you guessed it, communication. We have to focus on staying in touch. And when we're working on specific projects, that's often easier. We can have regular meetings and emails and phone calls, whatever works to keep the project moving. But in day-to-day life, when we're not actually collaborating with faculty, that's still really important. And it's important outside, like I said earlier, outside of regular outreach or any kind of mass marketing projects that we're doing. It's a social issue as well as a communication one. So we need that personal touch. We need to be in the meetings that faculty are in informal ways, and maybe at social events and that sort of thing. So keeping that communication, the doors open to communication, is a lot more than just shooting out a newsletter once a month and making sure they know we're here. In fact, it has been shown that faculty sometimes respond negatively to marketing emails and that sort of thing. They may feel that that lack of personal connection can actually be detrimental. So those are the three antecedents that came out of the study, and they are simple things: shared values, relationship benefits, communication. But those are all things that have been shown to build relationships, to build trust and commitment between librarians and faculty in ways that are much more interpersonal and not quite so sales-focused, if we can say sales, in our world here. So in short, the message is, keep it simple. If we can bring an awareness of the importance of these antecedents to all our interactions with faculty, we're going to see things grow. And if anyone is interested in reading the study I referenced, it is a really great read, and that is the information about it. Thanks for the few minutes to talk about this question.
Yeah, thanks so much, Kim. And I'll throw this same question out to the panel, either to respond to Kim's thoughts or respond to the question about the factors that create an environment for strong library-faculty relationships.
Well, this is Wayne. I'm actually going to be talking about a different aspect of this in my brief presentation later, so I think I'm going to leave it to others.
Sure, we can wait for you for your presentation, but Eric or Bonnie, do you have any thoughts that you want to add about the factors that create an environment for strong librarian-faculty relationships?
Yes,
Yeah.
Colleen. This is Bonnie.
Excellent.
I agree with the very strong interpersonal approach that Kim has mentioned in building the relationship and keeping it running. And also, too, I mean, that's especially critical in this current environment where everything in higher ed is changing so quickly. But one thing I've just also found that has worked very well, apart from, say, the e-newsletters being mailed out, and I agree, is to participate in that relationship as early as you can in the school year. So I've actually found one useful way to benefit from what the librarians have to offer and then what faculty members have to offer is student orientation, which I can come back to later when I round up.
Mm-hmm. Great, thanks for your insight.
Jumping in here, this is Eric from Emerald Group Publishing. Funny, I had a conversation with one of our sales folks prior to the webcast. One of the things that he mentioned, and I'll mention this during my presentation a bit as well, was discussing research with faculty members. It seems like very sort of easy technique in terms of trying to communicate at their level, but it's easy, but it's not necessarily something that's perhaps always executed. So that's something that's worked quite well for us when we're on campus from coming from a publisher perspective.
Mm-hmm. And for myself, this is Colleen from the University of Iowa. One of the things that I found is getting outside of the library and getting out into the departments or out to talks has really made a difference in connecting with faculty, is taking advantage of their spaces and not just our space in the library. Well, if we can move on to our next question now, which is, how have developments in scholarly publishing changed librarian-faculty communication? And we've got Eric Schwartz from Emerald Group Publishing, who's going to be our first respondent on this question. So take it away, Eric.
Thanks, Colleen. So I thought sort of the easiest way to describe, developments in scholarly publishing, and obviously publishing is moving rather quickly right now, as we know too well. I thought sort of the best way to attack that would be to describe a new development that we've actually sort of launched here at Emerald. That one is the Emerald Faculty Engagement Program that we're describing it as. Now the concept, again, sort of as I alluded to before, concept is somewhat easy. However, sometimes easy things are sort of right in front of your face and you don't necessarily, know it's something that you should actually do. But the concept was basically that when we were going into institutions, alongside our visits with librarians, we also wanted to include visits with faculty members. And that was actually quite a change and a shift for Emerald. And we've been doing it for about a year now, and we've been seeing some sort of good results. So I do want to go over, eventually what we're hearing kind of from the marketplace. But there were a number of reasons why we wanted to do this. As I mentioned, initiated in 2014 by our Vice President here of North America, Mike Sugarman. Big thing to know, it's not a sales pitch. So when we're going into institutions, we're not looking to, sell directly to faculty. This really came out of us wanting to gain more market intelligence. Emerald's a UK-based company, and we've had folks here in the U.S. for less than a decade now. And certainly one of the customer groups that we really wanted to understand better are those individuals that, in many cases write for us and are editors for us. So this was, kind of the idea behind the program. I would say thus far it's been well received, both by faculty and librarians. There's sometimes some nervousness, perhaps, in some cases, particularly on behalf of librarians, and I've experienced that a little bit as well. But overall, I think it's been quite well received thus far, and it certainly benefited us great as a company. And then also, somewhat related, we've recently formed the Faculty Advisory Board. Bonnie Buchanan, who's also sitting on this call, sits on that board, and it's something that has sort of helped us out greatly in terms of reaching out to the faculty community. So to give you an idea, what we're hearing from the librarian perspective, my budget is shrinking. That's something that I'm sure you all sort of deal with on a daily basis. But also, some of the other things that we are hearing, journal usage is up on campus from, according to what we're hearing from librarians, so that should be a good thing. More marketing needed for the library on campus. That's even something that Kim brought up earlier. That one certainly is one that's close to my heart, as a marketing manager. I always find that interesting to hear when I'm on campus and discussing with a librarian, and they say, really, we kind of want to get the word out about our library across campus to both faculty and students. In some cases, there's been action committees that have been organized. I've talked to a number of librarians that sit on those committees. I've also spoken to librarians that have said they've heard of committees being formed and the librarian wasn't being considered, so they wanted to sort of, put themselves in front of the other administration and become a part of those committees. There's a desire to better understand course assignments. I've had some discussions with librarians, particularly around that, wanting to delve deeper into course assignments and how to align, the holdings with those assignments. Discovery systems, why isn't it more like Google? I'm guessing that hopefully that has come up perhaps from the student end. That's something that we're certainly hearing from librarians in this new sort of immature marketplace of discovery systems. Lack of visibility around campus. So librarians, have said to me in the past that a lot of times a student or faculty member will search for research, and they didn't necessarily know that they have access to that research because of the library. Licensing agreements can be complicated, especially around ebooks. That's something that certainly has come up in our discussions with librarians. More faculty coming to the library to see where to publish. This is one that I've gotten before. I have actually had librarians tell me that they feel librarians are actually well positioned to address that. Some faculty members appreciate the library more than others. I think that's just kind of an environmental thing that we sort of can expect. There are certainly some faculty members that probably don't want to speak with publishers either, but it's really all about the approach, I think. So moving along, sort of what we're hearing from the faculty side. All that matters is tenure. That's obviously a phrase that is often stated from the faculty side, but also we are hearing about the future of instruction. And when I talk about the future of instruction, things that come up are terms like blended learning. Blended learning being that which is sort of partially online and partially in the actual classroom. Teaching and research track. So some institutions have a teaching track, some institutions have a research track for their faculty members, and some institutions actually have both. But that can certainly vary depending on what institution you're speaking at. Measuring impact beyond citation, that's something that's come up quite often with faculty members, and it's kind of in relation to thinking about the impact of research, perhaps just beyond the citation. Some faculty like library resources, others avoid the library. For me, that's kind of just the library and the faculty most likely need to meet in between in some cases. I think the library certainly provides resources that faculty need, but the faculty are sort of very busy at times and get quite frantic throughout the school year. So I think it's just a case of, sort of finding those needs. In discussions, in-person discussions around research, that was a little bit related to my answer there earlier. What we really found is some of our best conversations with faculty members when we're on campus actually just come about when we don't even have a meeting set up and we drop in upon someone's office, someone who may write for us, and kind of just have a in-person discussion about what they're researching, what they're seeing. That's certainly something that is always well received. A push for data over theory in the U.S., I think an important development within the research community now is this enormous push for data throughout research. And more journals and more places to publish. There's probably more journals now than there ever have been, and there's more of a need for faculty members to be publishing. So I thought it would also be fair to sort of give you a perspective from the publishing industry. And obviously the thing that comes up often for us is the proliferation of free online information will be the death of us. There's always the next thing that will sort of be the death of the publishing industry, but it never actually happens. So we get that a lot, but also Google is pursuing a car. So instead of sort of going deeper into the education community, Google seems a little more interested about developing a car. Library discovery systems, as I mentioned before, still a bit immature in terms of the marketplace. A need for academics to publish more. That's certainly something, as I mentioned before, that has come up from our perspective. Open access, that's obviously a huge topic within the research community and the publishing industry at large. There's a difference between mandates that have happened in Europe versus what is happening in the U.S., and it's also obviously moving a lot quicker for the hard sciences in terms of open access. MOOCs have a high dropout rate, so hopefully everyone on the line has heard of the term MOOCs. That's another thing that sort of could be perhaps the death of publishing, but as we've seen so far, there's sort of a high dropout rate for MOOCs. And I think that, just generally, more information is really going to be a good thing for everyone. So the way I look at it from a publisher is we're certainly not looking to go the way of the record business, and we want to be really a part of this proliferation of information that's going out there. And I really see it as being a good thing for everyone. So just kind of rounding it out, the common themes for me that, sort of have come up throughout are this idea of discovery. How can we make discovery better? How can we sort of uniquely reach those individuals that want research in a very, very specific area on perhaps a very specific topic. Increased need to publish. As I mentioned before, faculty members now more so than ever, at least from what I'm hearing in the marketplace, do need to publish in order to advance their career. Again, impact, sort of thinking about impact perhaps beyond just the citation. There's other ways to get research out there. More marketing, and hopefully this is a little bit of job security for myself as a marketing manager, but it does seem like a lot of us need more marketing. The librarian's looking for perhaps a little more marketing for their library. The faculty member who's working on research wants that research disseminated more widely. So I think there's a lot of opportunities for, sort of the three of us separate groups to meet in the middle. And improved communication, I think that we can all agree that really is a need, not only for libraries and for faculties at universities, but really, across the business world, specifically in relation to the increase of technology that's kind of happened over the last, decade or so. I think a lot of companies and organizations are rethinking sort of the best way to improve communication. So just lastly, I do include my contact information. And if anyone has any questions off of anything that was being discussed, my email is up there in case you want to contact me.
Thanks, Eric. I'll throw this question out to the panel then, responding to Eric and the question, how have developments in scholarly publishing changed librarian faculty communication? Would anyone from the panel like to be the first to respond?
I'll take the bait. This is Leader Reid.
Excellent.
I think one of the things that Eric mentioned that resonated with me from his presentation, and also I think one of the most important aspects of how we communicate and what we're doing to communicate is related to how we're involved in decisions about scholarly communication on campus. I mean, we could say in some ways that changes in scholarly publishing have not really infiltrated our campuses in some ways. So finding those ways for us to be involved in how those conversations happen and how the changes do make their ways into our tenure systems and all of that, being on the committees that discuss that really analyze the impacts and the benefits, and helping to guide those conversations, I think are really critical.
Thanks, Kim. And Bonnie, from your faculty perspective, have you noticed any developments in librarian faculty communication due to the developments in scholarly publishing?
Yes, I mean, I agree with all of those points that Eric mentioned in his common themes summary at the end. A couple that really resonated with me is that just I witnessed this amongst higher education institutions across the country and internationally, this increased need to publish, and it's not necessarily just for tenure and promotion needs, but also for an annual review basis. Also, say from a business school perspective and other schools, it's also necessary for accreditation. And then, just following on Kim's point about making sure, you're aware of those committees that measure that. Often, a lot of the difficulty is how do you measure that impact? Whose citation indexes are you going to use? Is it going to be published in Parish, Scopus, or some other? And then one other theme that resonated with me very strongly was the impact, the opportunities that exist beyond citations. So I found to be, my colleagues and I found to have as very useful tools in improving communication has been the increased use of social media such as Twitter, LinkedIn, blogs if the professor has a blog, or the increased use of media citations if you're quoted on the radio or in the newspapers or on television. Thank you.
Yeah, jumping in real quick. Jumping in real quick in terms of publishing industry speak, if it helps out the audience at all. Altmetrics is the term that we use in terms of what Bonnie was describing there. In terms of new ways of measuring impact. And I thought she gave some good examples in terms of social media or, coverage in newspapers and that sort of thing. I think that's something that would be big or should hopefully be big in kind of the years ahead. And certainly I think there's room there for, perhaps the librarians to get involved and perhaps even kind of help faculty promote research perhaps.
Yeah, and this is Wayne. Oh, sorry.
Great. Go ahead, Wayne, please.
From a more mundane perspective, in some ways, it's changed the nature of the conversations about the stuff we buy. One of my big worries in the humanities, which I deal with, is ebooks, for example, which is a different format of scholarly publication, but it's one that's required a lot more discussions with faculty about what they want, what I can give them, what is good for students, what's good for the library budget in ways that I've never really had to deal with before. So, if that's a fairly basic level, though.
For me, Wayne, that's another good example of, the three separate groups, meeting in the middle there.
Fantastic. I really appreciate all of your different perspectives on these questions that we're tackling today. It looks like we're at time to move on to our next question. The next question in our series is, what, in your view, are the biggest barriers to librarian-faculty communication and some of the misperceptions? And Wayne is going to lead us off in answering this question.
Yeah, thank you, Colleen. So I don't know if I'm going to talk about necessarily the biggest barrier, but I'm going to talk about a barrier that I encountered as a younger librarian and one new to dealing with academic departments and thinking that, I'm just going to go in and I'm going to tell them what I can do, and they're going to want to hear all about it and integrate me right in. So I'm going to talk about some barriers to perspectives and some misperceptions that I see or have seen in my work and compared to other people that I've talked to. So librarians tend to look at things only from their own perspective. So they think about what they can provide and what they really want to provide, and not necessarily at what teaching faculty want or what they think they want from librarians. And the problem is you can't persuade people to make a change because of your reasons for changing. You have to motivate change by leveraging what other people might consider a motive for change. And to do that, you have to see things from their perspective. And Kim talked about that a little bit, that you have to have a meeting of values. But part of that is to understand how faculty see the library. So there was a recent Ithaca report from, I think, a year or two ago that showed that most faculty see the library as a buyer of stuff. That's what the library is. And this irritated some librarians. But I think if they were irritated, it was because they tend not to think about the library the way that faculty often do. They're insiders and not outsiders. So if considering the library from another perspective, it shouldn't surprise them. Faculty are busy with their own research and teaching, and for that, they're usually self-sufficient, except that they need the books and journals and data sets and other things from the library. And for the teaching, the vast majority of it isn't necessarily even something where the library research or our roles would be appropriate to help them. So other than stuff, they often don't care about the library or think about what librarians do. And that can and does change with further conversations. But going in initially, it's important to begin with that in mind, especially if you're starting out with a new department or were relatively new, as I was at one point. So librarians, I think maybe overinflate how the faculty do or should perceive our roles. We're not going to have a librarian in every class. We're not going to be be seen as equal partners in the educational mission. So even in courses where librarians are absolutely necessary and often embedded, like first-year composition courses, the librarians are not necessarily as important as some of them think they are for that. I taught college writing for years at the University of Illinois and at Princeton, and I can say with certainty that while the library research and the information literacy aspect is absolutely important, it's not necessarily the most important or difficult part of learning to write the research essay or helping the students. And regardless, I think the faculty are never going to see librarians as equals because librarians typically, it's not always, but typically don't spend 45 hours a semester per class teaching students. I mean, we see them on a much smaller basis in much more limited capacities. And if we focus on reasonable spaces for intervention and collaboration rather than assume the sort of centrality that nobody else thinks we have, it might be better. And it's not necessarily a problem unless we make it a problem for ourselves. It's a problem for people who maybe project false preconceptions on the world and then get upset when nobody shares those. But other than that, it's really not. Okay, so faculty see the library as a buyer, and that's the function that they mostly use it for. They need stuff, we get it for them, and we can. If we can't buy it, we borrow it. So they see the buying, sometimes they see library instruction. Depending on the institution, they might see support for digital humanities projects or other types of collaboration that's very obvious. But they don't see the individual interactions with students, the research questions, the reference questions, the frustrations with understanding the complexities of the contemporary universe of scholarly information by people who haven't been doing this their entire adult lives. They don't necessarily see how difficult this is for people who aren't already experts, and that's stuff that we often see. But I think instead of claiming a greater role than we necessarily have, that we are equals doing exactly the same thing, I mean, we should communicate these things that we are doing and that faculty never see as a step in moving towards a greater collaboration. And so I think we need to start with how the faculty view us and what we're up against if we want to persuade them of what we're capable of. And even then, it's better not just to tell them what we can do, but show them, solve some problems they might not even know they've had. I mean, I've had some success with that these professors who didn't think they ever wanted to talk to a librarian, it turns out they really did want to talk to a librarian. They just didn't know it until a librarian reached out to them in the right way. So it's not about what we want to give them, it's about what we can get them to want from us. So our part of the educational mission, as I see it, may not be as directly involved and extensively involved as librarians might want, but we're certainly capable professionals in our own right, and we play many and varied roles. And sort of worrying that those roles are maybe not as direct as we like, we should focus on the places and functions where we do play an important role and collaborate where appropriate and not worry about the rest. And that's what I see some frustrations with librarians, that they are worried. I'm supposed to be doing all this kind of stuff and nobody will let me do it, but you have to build gradually and start from these common assumptions and to show what you're actually capable of. Okay, so that's my bit.
Thank you so much, Wayne. Kim, from your perspective as a Director of Library Services, do you have any responses to this question or to the fantastic response that Wayne brought to us?
Oh, putting me on the spot now, huh?
Well,
just
feel
kidding.
free to disagree.
I can open it up to the group as well if you'd like a few minutes to think about it.
I appreciate all the perspectives shared here. I think most of I agree that most of the misperceptions really come from they're environmental, right? They're created because librarians work in the world of library and faculty work in the library or in the world of faculty, and we don't necessarily experience what the other's world is like. For me, I've actually had kind of a different experience with that, just because I have a second master's degree. And I have taught before I got into libraries. So it's been interesting for me to see some of the tensions that come up between librarians and faculty when we don't understand the other side. And I think one of the best things that librarians can do is teach a credit class at some point. Get in there, experience the other side of things. I know we're all pressed for time, and that can be really challenging to find a moment when you can do that. But that's one of the most wonderful experiences, I think, to really cross that barrier. And faculty, we can't tell them what to do, obviously, but I think just by knowing kind of the worldview that they're coming from, that can really help too.
I would definitely. Sorry to jump in. I definitely agree with Kim. I mean, it's my years of teaching on the other side, not the librarian part, that shows me that it's a very different kind of world. And if you could teach one of these courses, I mean, that would be a great opportunity.
This is Bonnie. Would you still say that perceptions? I'm just trying to get a handle on this, Kim and Wayne. That perception about the tension between librarians and faculty. My understanding is that some librarians also have research expectations themselves. How does that change things?
Well, I can speak since it was mine. I mean, yes, that's absolutely true. And in many universities, especially a lot of large state universities, librarians have faculty status. But I think there's still a big distinction between the teaching faculty and the librarians. I mean, I do research, I write stuff, I publish stuff, and in other places I have tenure, but I have a tenure-like thing, and other librarians have to do tenure. But I think for a lot of, especially instruction people, I mean, they maybe don't have that experience, but they're told. I mean, I was basically forced into this. Okay, here, you're new. Go talk to this department and insert yourself and make yourself useful. And I mean, what I knew from some experience and found out from talking is that while they might think they know what librarians do, often they don't, and it's not very easy to just say, here, I'm really worthwhile, let me do my thing, let me take an hour of your class time to do my thing, or 2 hours, or in some cases, some of the courses I teach, I get 2 80-minute classes to do my thing, and that's very difficult to do for people who think that the librarian doesn't have much to offer except to buy stuff and really doesn't want to give up that precious class time to some person from the library.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for your perspectives. We did have a question in the Q&A that I'm going to throw right back to you, Wayne. Is just what do you think would be a good first step to breaking down these barriers?
Well, the first step might not be what you think. I mean, I think the first step is looking for a problem you can solve and then solving it. And it might not have anything to do with directly educating, undergraduates. I mean, I can give an example. I mean, when I took over, when I had religion librarianess thrust upon me many years ago, I mean, I was looking at a department that hadn't had a lot of interaction with the library for a while because of staffing issues and various things. And I needed some kind of in, and it turned, I mean, the reason I sort of took over is the religion graduate students had were sort of in an uproar that the graduate study room, and for them in Firestone Library, the main library at Princeton, hadn't really been updated, the collection, for about 25 years. And I took over a spent-out budget and mid-year. I mean, it was a big mess. But what I did, I mean, this is how I got my first in. I coordinated a group of graduate students to put together a list of desiderata. Give me everything you would possibly want me to buy for this room. I found out there was a professor in the department who had a teaching award fund that the library gives out to buy books for the library. And I basically got those two things together. So she agreed to use that money to solve the graduate student problem. It turns out she was the director of graduate studies. The graduate students were pleased. She was pleased. I got invited to talk to the graduate students. The next time somebody heard about that, I finally got invited to talk to the undergraduates in their junior seminar where they first do their independent work. And I have a similar story about a philosophy department, but the issue for me is try find a problem and then with the library and then solve that problem, because for people who maybe don't realize you can solve problems, once you solve it, they will ask you to solve other problems and they will integrate you more into the life of the department. That has been my experience.
Fantastic. Thank you, Wayne. So we've got one more question that we're moving on to, and before we get to our audience Q&A, the next question is, are social media tools assisting, hindering, or irrelevant for faculty librarian communication? And I'm glad we're moving on to this question because we've already had this come up more than once in the conversation today. As Eric Schwartz mentioned, the importance of marketing, and as Bonnie brought up about Twitter and citations and alt metrics. So I have just a few brief remarks for this question, and then we'll throw it out to the panel before moving on. Coming from the University of Iowa Special Collections, I just threw this slide up here with the types of social media that we've been getting out there in the past couple of years. And I just wanted to touch on some results that we've seen as we've built up our Tumblr with more than 40,000 followers, and we started on YouTube and Instagram. But actually, what I wanted to focus on was Twitter, because that's where I've seen a lot of, by the way, I'm answering this question as that it assists. And if anyone has a different response, we'll throw it out as soon as I've finished here. But I'm going to argue that Twitter in particular has assisted with faculty librarian communication, at least in my experience. So Twitter is definitely a way to get some measurement of impact. That is something that I did not include in my points here. But some of the other effects I've seen of being really active on Twitter, having a big active library presence on Twitter, is that I've seen a real connection, particularly with the faculty who are on Twitter. Now, granted, that's only a subset of the population that's out there, but what I found is that when we approach beginning a relationship, especially if it's somebody that I've interacted with on Twitter, it just generates a lot of positive feeling that really starts a relationship off right. I've been able to keep up on what the professors and graduate students are writing, teaching, and thinking about just by the things that they're talking about on Twitter, which always gives an opening for having a conversation, or sometimes that I can make recommendations about things that might help with those things that they've been talking about. At our university, since we do have a digital humanities cluster and support for the digital humanities here in our library, I found a big overlap between the professors that are on Twitter and the professors that participate in digital humanities projects, which since I'm coming from special collections, there's a natural overlap there, as special collections materials are often used as the sort of raw material for digital humanities projects. And then we can help them. And we can promote their work, especially when they've incorporated our university's rare materials into their work. Then it's a natural for us to turn that around and promote their work as well. So I get lots of anecdotal positive outcomes from our relationships on Twitter. Like, I saw this thing on Twitter. Can I bring my class in to see it? And I had no idea that you had something like that. And my favorite quote from a faculty member so far, which is, I just think about special collections all the time now. So really trying to meet that marketing need. And then it's built up a possibility for us to make partnerships for public events and scholarships using social media, in particular video. So we've done I did a live stream with a Shakespeare professor for Shakespeare's birthday, and I've been making some videos about medieval manuscripts with a graduate student in the history department. So it's opened up places for being collaborators for public scholarship that just weren't there before social media. So those are my brief thoughts on that topic, and I'd love to throw it back out to the panel and see, especially I know Bonnie, you mentioned Twitter, and Eric, you mentioned marketing. So if you have any other thoughts about the abilities of social media to influence faculty librarian communications, I think this would be a great time to respond.
Okay, Colleen, I'm coming at this from the angle of both being library liaison and also editor-in-chief for an Emerald journal called Journal of Risk Finance. So I have an interaction not just with faculty, but with the publisher, Emerald in this case, and the library. So here's my take on how certain social media work better for me, and from my point of view. I agree. I find Twitter excellent for staying up to date and finding out what's the latest or the hottest topic in, say, in my area, in finance or financial innovation. I've found LinkedIn to be a particularly good source. If say from the point of view I'm a faculty member and I've got a paper coming out in a journal, using this to say, you know, my paper's coming out in XYZ journal, you can see a copy of the forthcoming paper on, you know, this particular link. It's LinkedIn. I've also found, you know, you have groups in there, like, I mean, Emerald Publishing has a group on LinkedIn. I've found that very useful for promoting a special issue of the journal or for a call for papers. And I've also found Twitter useful for that too. A call for papers is excellent to go out on Twitter and LinkedIn, not just for early career researchers and tenured faculty, but for librarians and conferences as well. And I've also found LinkedIn to be very useful for promoting sometimes the Journal of Risk Finance, will sponsor or promote a particular conference or workshop, getting the news out about that. In terms of, once, say, a paper's published or, say, an issue of the journal's coming out, I found both LinkedIn and Twitter to be excellent for doing that. Where I think the library could maybe come in, or, I should be talking to them more, is in that call for papers and promotion of conferences. I'm not sure how the rest of the panel as librarians feel if they're on LinkedIn and some of these specialist groups looking at call for papers or promotions of conferences, because this is often another venue for faculty to pursue their research. And I'll leave my comments at that. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll jump in quickly. This is Eric. In terms of, what we're looking at in terms of social media, I will say it's good to hear Bonnie say that Twitter is a good resource. From my experience, it seems like sometimes when we go out there, faculty, it really depends upon the member. So some folks are maybe less to adopt it. However, I think obviously as a new generation of researchers is coming up, we're seeing much more interaction in social media. We are sort of gravitating towards the Twitter and LinkedIn, less so Facebook. Facebook really isn't sort of a platform, at least from my perspective, to do postings that are more on the professional side. So we're kind of looking at other avenues beyond that. And specifically, we did launch a couple of Facebook sites that were in relation to our specific subject areas that we publish in, and they didn't do too well. So that didn't really seem, it was a good experiment, but didn't really seem like a useful platform from our perspective. And then just kind of general, as a marketer, I always try to stay on the cutting edge. So I'm always looking for the new channels to reach out to, wider audiences for us. So it's Twitter now. It could be something in the future. So it's just a matter of always kind of staying ahead of the game.
Thanks, Eric. Did any of the other panelists want to respond before we move on to our final section?
I could say one thing. This is Leader Reid. I think I may be the skeptic in the room. So I have to say that I appreciate social media. I enjoy it, and I use it sometimes. I think it really depends on your community and your campus. I definitely found that there was a lot more activity on Facebook and Twitter and all of that when I was at a university library than when I moved to a community college library. The dynamic really changed there. So I think it may depend too on what library type you're in and what kind of technology your faculty are used to using, and that's driven a lot by the students and the campus, I think.
Great,
yeah,
thank
I
you.
would say that kind of goes along with sort of what we're seeing in terms of, if you're comfortable with it, you'll certainly use it. However, if there's not necessarily a need there, or if other people around you aren't using social media, then you might not be kind of joining those groups. So you really need to have, sort of encouragement from your surroundings, if you will.
Yes, exactly. Bonnie, did you want to take a chance to respond to all of the thoughts and questions that have come up in the discussion today?
Well, I think I've done some of that as I go along the way, but I just wanted to just come back to a point that I'd said I'd refer to later on, and that's about making sure, this is to do with library communication with faculty on campus, that earlier segment of the panel. And I'd mentioned one useful place for that relationship to be built, and one of the greatest benefits is early on in the academic year at student orientation. I found it a very useful venue, say from here at Seattle University, for example, in the business school, we have a very large graduate population in MBAs, and a lot of our population is part-time. Well, we've found it's very important for the librarians and the faculty to get that information out as soon as possible about what the library offers, not just in terms of books, DVDs, and journals, but also in terms of online databases that are going to be important for their courses. And I should also say, up here in the Northwest, we're on the quarter system, not the semester system. So 10 weeks is a very, very tight period. So at the student orientation, that's usually a couple of weeks before the quarter starts. I'm talking for the master's programs, and we usually have the core faculty introduce themselves, the directors, but then the librarian, particularly our business school librarian, will introduce herself and talk about what the library has to offer, and then a flyer is handed out summarizing that information. And that, I've found, has established a very good relationship, not just with the faculty, but also with the students before they even go into their first class. I saw some questions on the Q&A.
That's exactly where I was heading. Mm-hmm.
And one of the questions, I think it was actually aimed at Wayne, but I can answer this from a faculty perspective. The question I think that was aimed at Wayne, what has earned you the greatest respect from a faculty member? And I've actually found very early on in my career, one area of my research is financial history, and I had to use a number of primary sources. And there was no question about it. The first place I went was, our university library, and, just make sure you carve out that time and sit down. This is something you can't do over the phone. This is something you can't really do over the email. Just sit down with the librarian and go through and just very clearly articulate, this is what I need to search. Can it be done with our online databases, or do I have to use some type of interlibrary loan facility? But then just even things like, do I have my keyword search right here? Just really going back and doing some of the basics, really built and forged my relationship and respect for the librarians very, very early on in my career.
That's an excellent point. Thank you, Bonnie. I want to go to the Q&A. Oh.
Okay. Should I respond to that question, or it doesn't matter?
Go ahead.
No, that's okay. Well, one thing I want to say, I mistakenly thought I was answering some questions in the background that I wasn't. So if anybody wants to email me privately, Google academic librarian, my blog will show up in the first 2 or 3 things. Feel free to email me and I will respond to you.
Yeah, well, and it's absolutely worth mentioning that whatever we don't get to in the Q&A, we can get to your questions via email soon. So your questions don't have to go unanswered if we don't fit them into the end of this section here. I've seen a pattern in the questions coming into the Q&A, so I want us to address this as one of the final things. We've had both, I'm wondering what best practices are to make connections when you don't work in the same building and the majority of your interactions are remote or through email or phone. And similarly, they've been asking about assisting contingent faculty, which it seems that there's a similar issue there. So if you have any final thoughts or brief remarks on how to work together when we don't have the benefit of sharing space and maybe can't connect face-to-face in that way.
Colleen, this is Eric. I'll jump in real quick on that one.
Yes, please.
And I can certainly empathize. The majority of our folks work over in the UK, and I'm here in Boston, so it's something that we do a lot internally in the company. But also, just in relation to faculty, I Skyped a faculty member as early as yesterday, and I found that a lot of faculty use Skype, so I think that's a good tool to use.
Great. Kim, from your perspective, do you have any thoughts about what we can do to make this communication work when it's a challenge to get to connect in person?
Well, I think it's good to remind ourselves that it's not just our problem, that especially, or that we're talking about an issue that affects all faculty. I mean, we're going to see our full-time permanent faculty with the same issues trying to connect with colleagues who work in other places or are part-time. So we can take a little breath and say, okay, what are they doing? You know, to the extent that we can go and be in the spaces that they're in, there are usually orientation events. There are usually some kind of in-service or other activities at the beginning of a year or a semester. If the problem is that we just work in different buildings, then go take a walk through their building and stick your head in their doors, right? I mean, I think we just find the opportunities where we can, and if they're, you know, in another country, then that changes it, and we do have to rely on maybe Twitter or other methods, but wherever we can find common physical space, I think that is important.
Any final thoughts from you, Wayne?
Sure. I mean, I agree with Kim. I mean, part of it is just walk over to the building. But I mean, I think for the most part, I mean, email communication is fine if you have had some personal interaction before. I mean, not everything has to be in person. But I mean, there's holiday parties. If there's that I'm sometimes invited to. I mean, if there's a problem that someone has, I might try to meet with them in person, even though I could possibly solve that by just sending them an email. I mean, especially if I've only met them, say, once before, when people are new and you introduce yourself and say, you know, is there anything I can do to help you? I mean, even those small interactions build up over time so that there's at least a face behind the email or the phone call.
And that's such a good point. Don't underestimate the value of a phone call over email, right? We get so used to emailing, and just picking up the phone sometimes is such a better connection.
Well, hopefully we can. Oh, and Bonnie. Bonnie, did you have any final thoughts?
No, not really to add on top of that, except there was one question that came in, is regular attendance at faculty meetings worthwhile? Just my 2 cents worth here. Certainly that beginning of the year faculty meeting or convocation is really important. Not necessarily every meeting, but certainly a meeting. I mean, it was mentioned midway through the talk today that budgets are shrinking at libraries, and budgets are shrinking everywhere, departments, colleges, universities, it's shrinking everywhere. Obviously, libraries do have a deadline with which to spend or close their accounts for the year, just maybe to make sure the contact's regular, maybe through a faculty meeting that the deadline for orders is coming up in the next month. Make sure you get your orders in or something, just that regular contact there.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And thank you to all of you presenters for the information that you shared today. And to all of you out there, if you enjoyed this webcast, please make sure to check out Library Journal's upcoming webcasts at www.libraryjournal.com/webcasts for more information. And thank you everyone for attending today. This webcast will be archived in approximately 1 week, and we'll send you an email to tell you when it's available. And you can find this webcast and our other archived and forthcoming webcasts at www.libraryjournal.com/webcasts. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.